Has this been missing this whole time? I don't have a silk screen. It's gonna work. It's got the same knobs, everything about it. I wonder what year this is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that next?
Yeah.
Tell him if he ever wants to sell it. It's gorgeous. Because they had one of these at Guitar Center, so I drove, and it was like the same. It was exactly like mine. I drove down there, and I was so excited. When I got down, it was just a dog. You know, it was just really badly set up, and it didn't have this same feel that this does, which is the sort of lived in, been used, been played by somebody lovingly. It just kind of was a bit of a beta, and hadn't been looked after. Probably could have been set up. Could have been set up and neck strained and all those kind of good things, but it was just kind of a disappointment because I didn't have that emotional response. But picking that up,
you got chills.
You got chills. It was just beautifully set up, and it's in a rack being used on a record, and so I just felt like, you know what I mean, like
beautiful studio and
in a beautiful studio, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that's great about this place. It's like I get that feeling all the time. You know what I mean? Just like everything I touch is just like, this is lived in. This makes music. This is like inspirational. You know, it's not just LA2A whatever, but it's like actually I don't know something exciting about it. You know,
that's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. So, Joe, thank you ever so much for letting us come in here and hang out with you. I'm really, really excited because, first of all, there's Breakfast in America, disc when you come in.
Absolutely.
And Tim had told us when we did the video of the whole studio that it was it just recorded or was it made here from scratch?
I know it was mixed in this room. I believe it was recorded in A as well.
Yeah, there were some parts of it that were recorded elsewhere, but the primary recording was done.
Yeah, that's
mixed in this room, and
I remember the Logical song coming out as a kid.
Oh, that's
just in that.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Oh, absolutely amazing. But it was mixed in this room.
Yeah,
and this is still the original setup. Is that correct?
It's fairly similar. Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe later you can show. We have a picture of a bunch of pictures of this room back in the day, and all the woodwork and all that's all original. So yeah, this room, as far as I know, is the least changed from the original setup and layout.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I can see you're obviously doing some tracking in here as well.
Yeah, doing some tracking, some production, mixing, all kinds of stuff. It's been great. This room actually sounds really good for quick last minute overdubs that I tend to do. Well, mixing, I'm still usually recording some percussion or keyboard or something random last minute thing, and so I've found that even just like a mic right here in this room sound is actually a really good shaker sound apparently.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there's an inevitability. When we were talking with Bradley earlier, he was saying, they went to mix a Foo Fighters record and they're like, oh, there's no lift in the chorus. We need to do a guitar overdub to bring in some extra oomph.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that sort of part of our process, isn't it? The mix is never finished until...
Yeah, it's true. Because sometimes there's if something needs a little more high end, it doesn't necessarily just need more treble. It just needs a tambourine. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
very smart.
There's something in that frequency range isn't moving as in grabbing your ear. Just cranking an EQ on something sometimes is the answer, but sometimes it's just that there's some other element that's just not moving around in the right way in that area. So I think mixing to me is still very much part of the production process and the recording process and all that stuff. It's the last little step of, okay, we have all these elements, put them together, and then you still see there may be a couple little holes or maybe too much stuff and you start to get rid of things or whatever. But, it's definitely, it's not just, here are these, 16 tracks, just get the right volume and print it. That's not a mix. That's a balance. A mix is, how do all these elements work together? How does it suit the song? And is there anything more we can do to add or take away or put it in a different space? And that's how, you use reverbs and things like that, is not just for tail, but delay and stuff like that, is to actually put stuff into an environment that's that's different than how it was recorded. Anyway, and in this place, so many options for doing that. It's incredible. Having an echo chamber here, there's so many spring reverbs here. I was like,
Wow.
How many different kind of spring reverbs are there? But it's a lot, and they're all great.
You've got the AKGs. You've got
We got the AKGs. There's a Fairchild one that's really interesting.
Didn't know there was such a thing.
Who knew? I didn't know. It sounds great. I got the 555. Oh, they pulled it out. Anyway, it used to be there. The Roland Space Echo one. I love that. That's a classic. And anyway, there's all kinds of different options for that stuff, and I've been overwhelmed almost out with with riches being here.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
How did you get started in our crazy little business?
Well, I mean, I've sort of always done this in the sense that as a kid, writing songs, teenager, Tascam 4-track in the garage, all that kind of stuff, sort of leveled up each way. And then in college, I went to USC. It's more of like a music business kind of program, but started working at Capitol Records and interned there. And at the same time, I've just always been in bands and was always kind of producing my bands and my friends' bands and doing all that kind of stuff. And then while at Capitol, I got myself into the studio there and, basically was a temp, was a runner, did all the stuff. And every little thing I learned that day, I'd go home and do it on whatever record I was working on, and just kind of did that. And sort of in parallel grew what I was doing creatively with what I was learning professionally until they kind of finally merged eventually. And, now I do this fully professionally and, work with all different people. But it's sort of been a combination of learning it myself in the garage, as it were, while also learning it from, people at Capitol Records and all the big names and big major studio, and sort of finding how do those two combine, how do I take this large format recording stuff that I'm learning in this big studio, and how do I apply that to recording a 4-piece indie rock band and, in a small indie studio that I have access to, and kind of taking those two things and kind of merging them essentially,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit of overview. You went to USC.
Yeah.
You did the business stuff. You interned at Capitol. Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
And did that immediately lead into an assistant job, or?
Immediately would not be the word I would use.
Okay, I'm intrigued because I get asked all the time. I mean, one of the biggest questions we get is probably firstly, can I do this in whichever town I live in? Do I have to move to a big city? If I do move, people want to know all of the ins and outs of what it takes. What was your?
I would say, I would not use the word immediately. I would say it was a long, it takes dedication. It takes a long time. Like, if you're doing this to expect, I'm going to, watch a few tutorials and mix a couple of things and I'm going to just learn how to do this real quick.
Yep.
That's not, it takes a long time of practice. It takes years of doing it. Like I said, learning every little thing and trying it and doing it 10,000 million times until all of a sudden that stuff just kind of becomes second nature, and you can learn that in all different ways. You don't have to be in Hollywood or work at a big studio. I had the fortunate opportunity to do that. But even that was a long slog, I didn't show up 6 months later, I was an assistant, 6 months later, I was an engineer. And the next year I was producing records. Like I was there, I started in college and, I was there, interned for a couple years, poured coffee to, that really did it. And like in each step of the way, it's a long process, but it's, as long as you're learning the whole time, as long as you're growing, and as long as you're taking stuff and applying it, and and like I said, I'm still learning. I'm doing this, and every day I'm learning something new, and that's what it is. It's a constant process. It's not like take a 6-month course and now you are certified to do this. It's really it's a lifelong pursuit. And that's really the only advice I would have is to keep learning, keep trying, keep doing it. Don't get frustrated, or do get frustrated, but let that frustration make you try harder and, keep going. That's really it. There's no shortcut.
I think you have to just love this.
You have to love it. You have to live it and love it. Yeah.
I mean, it's like that feeling of just picking up that Guild Starfire over there and just being like, oh my God, this guitar is so beautiful. If you don't have a visceral reaction to music on some level, whether it be a mic pre, a tambourine overdub, a guitar, a song you hear on the radio, if you don't have that, this is not the business for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there is no right way or wrong way. I think some people love songwriting. Some people like to be a mixer, a producer, an engineer. There's no right or wrong thing.
Correct, yeah.
But if you can connect to that,
Yeah, it's a feeling that you have to get, you know, and I always look for that too in whatever sort of role I'm playing on a record at any time. It's less about following a series of steps, let's say, and it's more about like, this doesn't quite feel right yet, and you sort of tinker and tweak things, and all of a sudden it starts to feel right, and that's when I know I'm like going down the right path. And it's that same thing where it's not just like you don't just follow a protocol of you do these steps and you will make a good record. It's like, you know, if you love music, you know how you feel when you hear a good record. And that's kind of what I'm always in pursuit of, you know what I mean? And it's like trying to find that feeling every time I'm working on something. And, you know, I think that's the most important thing to strive for, really. It's not about, you know, how, like, you know, what is the frequency response of this? It's what is my personal response to this, you know?
Right.
And I think, you know, we're always kind of looking for that and trying to find that answer in all different kinds of ways. And I mean, that's just to bring it back to what you said. It's what it's about. Like, you have to love this, and you have to want to do this, and you have to be driven to create music, to make recordings, to recreate that feeling that you get when you listen to whatever your kind of touchstone, you know, music and albums are. And honestly, that's what I'm always striving for whenever I'm doing this stuff. It's, you know, it's kind of funny because it's like, I was thinking about this recently. Doing what I'm doing, it's, you know, I really enjoy it. It's my most favorite thing to do in the world. But most of the time when I'm in the middle of it, it's this feeling of tension, right? Because it's like solving a jigsaw puzzle. You know what I mean? At the end of the puzzle, you get to see this beautiful picture. But at each step of the way, it's this like intricate, tiny little like detail that you're working on. And it's like kind of frustrating because it's not quite there. And then all of a sudden, boom, at the end, you get this like this beautiful thing, you know? And that's kind of the thing I'm always looking for. It's like, each step of the way, it's like this intense kind of feeling of like, okay, yeah, these two elements are kind of coming together, but it's still not quite there, not quite there. And then all of a sudden it's there. And it's that feeling that I'm always kind of like striving for, you know? But I think that's why I pursue it. I think that's why a lot of us do, you know, it's again, to get that, like that emotional reaction that you've gotten to all the records that you've ever heard and loved. And, you know, why doesn't my record make me feel that way? Well, you keep working on it and then it does, you know, and that's it.
So give me a little inkling into your process here. I see you're sitting in this beautiful studio. We've talked about Breakfast in America was mixed, which is absolutely fantastic. We have this gorgeous console here. Are you utilizing the console in the mix process? Are you semi in the box, hybrid? What's your sort of process?
I guess technically a hybrid. What I've found, at least being here in this space, I try to use as much of the analog stuff on the way in. Try to get, you know, because I have access to all this great EQs and mics and outboard gear and stuff like that. I like to use that stuff sometimes in mixing, but the real truth is that in today's day, people expect so many revisions and so much access to files and stuff that the idea of like, let's just pull the mix up, get the mix and move on. People don't really kind of get that, no matter how much I would like it to be that way.
Yeah. So
just out of that nature, and honestly, I find it's just, you know, I've got a good workflow that's in the box for mixing. But as far as for tracking and recording and all that other stuff, I'm really trying to make sure that I get the best signal, you know, use whatever I can to get the front end great. I think that's really the most important part. And honestly, the thing that I said too about workflow, that's what's important. You know, once you find what that is, whether it is fully in the box, hybrid, fully analog, whatever, that's the correct thing for you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think everyone kind of has a different version of that. And I don't think that there is like, oh, if you don't do it this way, you're not like doing it the right way. It really is about how efficient are you at doing this, you know, and making a great thing. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of my workflow right now is to use as much great stuff as I can going in. And then once I'm mixing, if I don't have access to what I need, then yeah, I'd take some stuff out, use these EQs. We've got, you know, the Unfair Childs here, which are fantastic. You know, can run anything through that. We've got the chambers, we got plates, we got, as I said, a bunch of spring reverbs and all kinds of cool little effects like that. So I'll kind of run stuff out, create some extra elements, bring them back in, and kind of ultimately do the final mix will be in the box.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I understand about recallability. Is that a word?
Sure is. I mean, yeah.
It gets difficult because I work in a hybrid fashion. And people will come back to me and go, "Oh, okay, great. Now we've finished it. Can you give me these 85 different kinds of stems?"
Yeah,
I'm like, "Sure, that's 3 days of printing."
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
But they're so used to like opening up a computer and everything being so available.
Exactly. And just doing a quick offline bounce or whatever, and they don't sort of realize that to do it that way, really, it's time,
Plus, it never comes back the same.
Exactly. It's a unique thing. And again, I love that, and I do that when I can. But I'd say 90% of the time, in advance, I'm kind of, this is going to bite me in the ass if I don't do it this way, Right. So But again, it's as long as you have access to some nice stuff and really get a good signal and use the correct things for what you're doing going in. I think, you have a bit more flexibility, that way. But again, it's all, everyone's got their own thing, so.
What are you currently working on?
I am working on, I'm mixing a bunch of stuff for independent artists here in LA. I'm working on an album for it's basically for a big film franchise thing that's and I'm over at Henson Studios doing vocals for that. We went to Abbey Road and did a big orchestra session.
Wow, amazing. Who was the orchestra?
It was the London players.
The LSO, London Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah. So yes, we were in Studio 1, Abbey Road for a couple days. Studio 2, we did choir and a bunch of Are
you allowed to say what the movie was?
Not at the moment. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's still kind of still kind of working on it. But working on that's part of what I do. Kind of like my main client that I have that I do a lot of work with, and then honestly, I'm involved in kind of the music scene here in LA. So always kind of working with other artists in that world and collaborating and producing, mixing, engineering stuff with them, and that's really it. And being here has been for that stuff really excellent.
So give us a little bit of a career breakdown. So you eventually got to assist at Capitol after, interning for a while.
Yeah. When I was working at Capitol in basically Studio A, B, and all those kind of rooms, a lot of big band records and jazz and orchestra kind of overdubs and film dates and stuff like that. Got to work with Al Schmidt and Nico Bolas and these a lot of people that really kind of were my mentors. Did a Neil Young record with the two of them.
Which Neil Young record do you remember?
Called Story Tone.
Wow.
And it was really, that's talk about chills. It's a beautiful record. If you haven't heard it, it's Neil Young. There's two versions that they did, and one is just him playing an instrument and singing. It's just solo Neil Young. And after that, then they went into Sony and cut a big full orchestra. And again, live, he's in the room next to the conductor singing with the full orchestra, and sort of like the two, like as stripped down and raw as possible. And then this big, beautiful orchestration, but yet all of it is always this like really kind of intimate sounding performance. And so that was really a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was me, another assistant, Al and Nico in the control room, and Neil Young in the live room with an acoustic guitar singing a song. We literally just saw him put the paper down and go, okay, let me try this one. So you get to have experiences like that. It's really, really amazing.
Al was telling us about that record that they got into a discussion, so we say, where Neil's like, I love the mixes, and Al's like, no, that's just the rough I printed for you. He's like, do you remember that happening?
Yeah, kind of. I do remember Neil actually his approach was pretty hands off, and I think it had to do with the fact that he's working with Nico, who he's worked with for a million years and trusts very, very much, and Al, who he also has worked with a lot over the years in Capitol with, so he was kind of like, he would come in, do his thing, and not really give many notes, actually, is how I kind of remember it. He would kind of just trust that we were, tape, as long as tape is rolling and he was doing his thing, like everything was cool. And then, I think when he would just walk in, hear a little piece of it and be like, yep, we got it. That's the thing,
Yeah.
So it was to get to see that experience and to be a part of that has been very educational, because it really was sort of, watching Nico do that as a producer. What did he do? Well, what he did was he took an artist and put him in a space and created an environment for him to be creative, period. You know what I mean? He didn't sit there and write charts. He didn't, produce a track, or, do you know what I mean? The producer, in this sense, is the person who is able to put the artist, again, in an environment where they can be creative and put them around people that they can trust and feel comfortable with, and capture a thing and make a record with that. And that's, seeing that on that level was very, very, very educational for me. And that's an approach that I always kind of try to take, that it's, I try to be, my philosophy is like, I'm here to make your record, right? You don't come to my studio and I tell you how we're going to do this. I'm always kind of like trying to feel out, all right, are you comfortable singing this way, playing this way? Do you want me to bring in other musicians? Do you want to be in the room? And I don't, instead of even kind of asking all those questions, you kind of feel it out as you go. And again, the whole idea is to create a space that's comfortable and creative and be completely transparent. And then when they walk in the control room, what they hear back on the speakers should sound as close to a record as possible. Like, that's the job, And yeah, certainly learning that from those guys and on sessions like that is, invaluable. And then just as far as the other half of my background at Capitol, which is a little unusual for that studio, because again, you sort of think more of the types of sessions I'm talking about, plus the big band and the jazz and the orchestral stuff. But I was hired actually initially as a house engineer to set up what we call kind of writer room, production rooms. And so we were working with what was EMI at the time, is since been sold off and everything, but EMI Music Publishing, we did a partnership with them and we built basically pop writing rooms. And so
further up in the tower, yes?
Second floor.
So I've worked in them.
Okay, cool. So I was the
cut vocals with Tori Kelly in the room with the Genesis in.
Oh,
did you put that in?
That it was either me or Travis was your engineer. So that was my job for 5 or 6 years. I was doing that. So I set up those rooms, and so that was an interesting experience too, because again, I come from a background of playing in bands and kind of more like a rock and roll kind of side of things. I was getting this big education in jazz and orchestral recording and, old school large format recording style. And then I got 5 years in pop production, top 40, hip hop, R&B and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, my approach is really being able to kind of blend all those different things, kind of trying to make a record that's as organic and musician focused and artist focused as possible, that has really great high fidelity sounds and strings and horns and things like this, and modern sensibility and production and that kind of stuff. So for me, that's kind of the ultimate blend, and I did get an opportunity to learn all that by doing, by working at Capitol, and also, but besides that, always doing it on my own and always pursuing kind of, I had this like indie rock independent side of me, and then this like large scale studio assistant side, and then add to that the sort of pop top 40 kind of thing. And once I kind of was able to blend all that, this is kind of where I found my voice.
It sounds perfect, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
We were just talking earlier about how the best producers and engineers that we admire don't have a genre.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. No, again, it's all about transparency, right? If you want to work with artists who have a vision, who have determination and drive, and they come in, like, I don't want someone to just show up to the studio like, I kind of want to make a record, so what do I do now? I want someone to come in and be like, I got these songs, I got these ideas, I don't know how to get them, and like that. And to me, when I get that, then that's when I kind of step into gear and find, new and different ways to kind of interact with that artist and the space that we're in, and what are we trying to do? What is our resources, and how are we going to do this? That's the process, and that changes with every record.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Capitol, what an experience.
Yeah.
Al, Nico Bolas, beautiful rooms, mixing with your indie side. So where did you go from there?
From there, actually, a client that I was working with in on the second floor in the writer rooms, basically hired me to build a production space in their.
Who was the client?
Honestly, just like an independent company, and they were basically developing, a few different writers and artists and stuff. And so, yeah, I went with them and put together a room and have been working and kind of developing some stuff. And then we started what was sort of demos turned into records. And now that led into the project I was telling you about where we're doing an album for a big movie. And so that started off as just kind of writing sessions and turned into me getting to go to Abbey Road and record an orchestra. So that's, kind of
pretty phenomenal,
kind of a nice little thing. And then, and I've been with them, and it's kind of like just again, more like a steady regular client. And then in June or so, this room opened up, and all of my other kind of independent things that I've been working on, I've just kind of been working out of the house or going to different studios just for project by project by project. So it's been nice to actually settle into a space and kind of, put my mark on it a little bit, and, just kind of, have a spot to work out of and not be kind of so just moving around all the time,
And you get to utilize all the other rooms and
absolutely
all of the gear they have here.
Absolutely. And that's really very, very exciting and been a real inspiration. And honestly, just there's a vibe in this place. There's there's ghosts here, the good kind, and you feel it when you come in here. Again, being a big fan of soul music and all that, and knowing the Stevie Wonder connection to this place. And the very first thing that I cut here was sort of a cover of a 70s soul tune by the Spinners. And it was just like so easy,
yeah.
You come into the room and it's already in the room, right? All I had to do was, get a killer band, get a bunch of horns, get an amazing rhythm section, and make a good recording. But that's all you can do that. That's easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to be in the right environment where you can do something like that and pull it off in the real way, where you just put the mics up, get a band, they do a few takes, it gels together, and then do another kind of layer of everyone kind of playing together, doing the secondary parts, and all of a sudden you get this big fat rhythm section sound, horn overdubs, and boom, look at that, you got an amazing 70s soul record. And
wow.
And I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that you're in a place where you can get those kinds of sounds, where people walk in and feel inspired. And again, that goes back to what I was saying, that the most important thing you can do is put people in an environment that feels creative, that feels comfortable. And whether that's your home studio that you set up, or if you have the budget, going to a United or a Capitol or an Abbey Road or whatever, where you walk in there and you feel this presence and this, and it however you go about it. But that's the most important thing, is that when an artist comes to your space, whatever it is, or you go somewhere with them, that everyone's inspired and everyone just feels this sense of, oh, we're going to do this thing today. You know what I mean? It can't just be another day at the office, as it were. That's not how good records get made. There's, and there's just different ways of doing that. And it's very easy here, because it's, again, it just, you walk in the doors and you just feel that, and
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a combo platter. You've got the history of the studio, and then you've got the fact that Eric, Valentine has been in here and left his stamp all over the place. And
yes. And
brought in his gear. And
that's been actually another part of the real, learning aspect, and what's been very, again, very inspirational of being here, is that there's everywhere you go, there's you kind of realize, oh, someone thought of this idea already, and put an easy way to pull that off. You go into a certain spot and you're like, oh, this would sound really cool. And you look down and there's a patch bay right then, there's a patch point right there, because someone was like, oh, I need to put a mic here for something, and I find that even too with even the way that the console works, it's it's designed a little bit differently. And as you kind of go about it, when you first look at it, you're like, oh, well, that's odd that this is in this order or whatever. And then as you kind of reach for it, you go, oh yeah, that's exactly where that thing should be. And the way that the EQs are designed, where it's on the one hand completely flexible and you can do anything you want, but yet it's also very easy to just quickly get something, and that's what's very important. It has that combination of, whereas something like a Neve or an API or whatever has these like, okay, that's that sound, right? You can get it has a sound, but it also can get any other thing if you know how to manipulate it. And that's, I think, a really, seeing that philosophy, and I see that everywhere in this building, where like there's, on the one hand, a really easy solution to what you're trying to do, and yet if you want to tweak it, it's infinitely flexible. And I've kind of discovered that in this place, and that's just baked in, and kind of come to realize that that's the philosophy, I think, of Eric, and the way he kind of works, and the design he put into the studio. So that's been really cool, to kind of get into that headspace a little bit and try to crack the code. I was like, oh, I wonder why this is. Oh, that's why, because that's really cool. And while I'm here, oh, here's some other new idea I have, because this, kind of set off that spark, and kind of, it inspired me to think of some other thing that I wouldn't have come up with if I, were just doing things the way you kind of typically would, if
right,
when you kind of get into your routine or whatever.
Marvelous. So I'd love to know some like go-to stuff, like what is, there's obviously no one size fits all, there's no perfect anything, but if you are reaching for something, say for a vocal, is there a sort of a starting point for a vocal mic that you feel like will do most jobs?
I mean, I'm going to answer this the way that you didn't want me to, which is it really depends. I mean, on what are you working with? The vocalist, right?
Yeah.
And so is there one holy grail microphone? I mean, not really, I mean, sure. Who could go wrong with a very good sounding 47 or, a good 251, right? That said, and that's what I had when I was working in the production room. We had just different people coming in every day. You didn't know what you were going to get. Typically a 251 would be there, and 90% of the time that would be ideal, right? Again, occasionally the top end's a little different for somebody else, so maybe a 47 would be better. Or if it's I've done some great stuff with an SM7. If the vocalist is maybe has a little bit more power, and you want to kind of get it all close up in there and get a different tone, so something like that. But yeah, I mean, those are probably my go-to. 47, 251, SM7. Depends on kind of,
right.
Is it a rock and roll? Is it jazz? Or is it Motown? Like
marvelous. No, that's exactly the answer I did want. I know there's not like a go-to for anything, but I like to provoke to sort of feel like it. Yeah. Are you, because there's obviously always the old favorites when it comes to drums. 57 top and bottom, 421s on toms seem to be where most people go.
I hate them.
Yeah, it's funny because that's been the discussion.
I hate them.
All of us are all like, why do we end up using 421s? Because none of us actually end up liking them.
The only time that I think 421 kind of works for me on toms is when it's like a heavy rock thing, and I want this like real spiky, punchy tom thing to cut through the speaker. I'm always kind of more interested in like natural kind of sounds and capturing, really the tone of the. And I'm a drummer if I'm anything musically, so my brain is always thinking about how did the drum sound from the drum throne. Like that's kind of my perspective. You know what I mean? So it is more about kind of capturing a natural sound of the kit in the space. So for me, I do like more like 414s or C12As if I have them, or sometimes an 87 or something. But the larger diaphragm sort of condenser things, now those are very sensitive, right? So if you're playing with a drum, recording a drum who plays with a light hand, that's great. Big bashing rock stuff, you put a pad on it, but maybe sometimes that may be, a bit, even still a bit much. So then, you might reach for something else, But at that point, honestly, if someone's hitting that hard, the overheads and the rooms and stuff, to me, is what's capturing the tone, and then I'll use the close mic for that, just to kind of for panning, for placement, so it kind of puts it in the spectrum a little bit. But in terms of the actual sound of the tom itself, I'm probably getting it more from the overhead and from sort of a close room mic kind of a thing. But yeah, I do like the large diaphragm condensers on toms. And I've been messing with putting them in a figure 8 pattern recently, which if you kind of position them right. So instead of, most people assume, you're supposed to point the microphone capsule down straight at the skin but I'm more like trying to point it sort of across the drum head a little bit, sort of capturing the actual instance of the stick hitting, that's kind of how I'm trying to focus it. And so if you kind of aim it that way, so you take a condenser microphone, capsule here, figure 8 pattern is rejecting up here. So you can put a pretty sensitive microphone underneath a crash cymbal or a ride cymbal, which is where they're going to be on a tom, right? A floor tom is usually a ride cymbal above it. Rack tom's usually a crash cymbal right above it.
This would be an amazing opportunity to walk into another room, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, sure. We do have a live room with a drum set.
Yep. You ready to rock?
So here is our live room, Studio B.
Oh, the Sonys.
Yes, and these are a favorite of mine for overheads. The Sony C37s, C37A. They sound great. I really love them. For overheads, or even sometimes, again, depending if it's not a big bashing thing, if it's more kind of an old school kind of vibe, you can even get to like sort of like a far-ish snare sound with that thing, and it'll get that really nice kind of 60s kind of drum tone. It doesn't hurt to have a beautiful old Slingerland kit as your drum kit.
Absolutely.
Which I brought into the space and been really happy about. But yeah, so as I was saying, right, so in other words, you have a C12A or 414 or something like that, and you kind of position it this way. Well, this crash cymbal is right here. If you put it in figure 8, you're going to get a decent amount of rejection from this top end, get what you're looking for, which for me, again, is more about the sound of the stick and the drum head vibrating as opposed to like, pointing it straight down. You think about it, how often do you listen to a drum like this? You know what I mean? Like not too often.
Not too often.
You're kind of hearing it from more of how it sits in the room. So that's kind of really my approach.
And then with the figure of 8, are you noticing quite a drastic improvement on the cymbal bleed over the top?
Yeah, I am actually. All
right, we're trying that.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, you remember that? Because we have C12As available for toms too.
Again, it depends on, your drummer, how hard are they bashing, and, how's it sound in the room. In this room, it's pretty focused, dead sound, so I'm not worried too much. The figure 8 obviously opens up the back of the capsule. So you get a little bit of stuff, kind of just a little bit more ambient. But again, I like that.
So you have the NS10 kick here.
Yeah, that's another Sony 500. I like that on the front. I'll do again, depending on what it is, anything from a, super old vibe, a D20 or something like that would be nice. Or
these are gorgeous looking C500s.
Yeah, those are cool. They're kind of like a, sort of underrated little secret mic that, people don't.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess recently the secret's been out,
No, I think after this, they'll be.
And
they just look like they should be on a kick drum. I mean, that's a substantial looking mic.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of listen to it, it has like a really nice rich low end, and it's the top end's whatever, but it has like the focus of that mic is right in the range of what you would want on kind of an outside kick for that large, kind of thing. The sort of that 47 fed on the outside concept, just a slightly different version of it, basically.
Are you often doing this with no hole on the kick drum?
No, it really depends. Again, this particular kit setup right here is for a real kind of vintage sound.
Right.
So with that, no hole, front head, not too close. It's just getting the, the tone. For more of a rock thing, I've got another, kind of more rock and roll kit kind of set up over there with the hole in the front. Maybe that'll be a D112 or something, or occasionally ATM 25. I like those sometimes on the inside. It's a good one that just gets like, got some good low ends, got the punch, and for that, then I'll use something on the front as well, a 47 fed or whatever,
Beautiful.
Whatever something similar is.
I see you've got the Bandmaster over there.
Yeah, that's actually I brought that out from New York. It was my dad's Bandmaster when he was in a band in the 60s.
Wow.
So I grew up when that sort of memory of me being in the basement listening to the jukebox and all that stuff. I was also messing around with that amplifier. So that's been in my life since I was born.
Oh,
and
that's
those
fantastic.
2 guitars as well. Those are 62 Jaguar, 64 Rickenbacker. Also
Those were your dad's?
Yes, these were my dad's.
Oh, that's amazing.
I've taken and brought them out here, and they've.
You mind if I?
Oh, please. Yeah, they're great.
Oh, this is.
Give it a little push up there. Oh no. Okay. Uh-oh.
that took some work.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they sound really nice. And while we're on the subject, this Vox organ as well, same thing. This also came from.
This is completely original.
Yeah.
Wow! Look at that neck.
Yeah.
Look at the quality of that wood.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
That is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
Wow.
that Rickenbacker too is really a special one.
What model is that? 360? I'm not very Rickenbacker savvy. I don't know much about them.
Yeah, 360, and it's supposedly the Liverpool model or something like that, because it has this like inlay on the back that's kind of specific. This little inlay, checkerboard inlay.
Yeah.
And,
Checkerboard sort of looks like a piano.
Yeah, exactly. And it just sounds fantastic. The original bridge and everything. Oh, it's a
instant John Lennon looking guitar.
Instant John Lennon looking. Instant, you get your Birds sound.
Yep.
And so that's a 6-string. So what I like to do too is I'll record that, and then I have a telly that's set up like the high string Nashville thing, and double it to get this sort of faked 12-string thing.
But that's what Don Smith told me. That's how they got the Tom Petty Rickenbacker 12-string, was the Telecaster with that. So.
It's funny because that's who told me that as well.
Come on, we're going to high-five that.
Yeah,
Don told me that. He's like, everybody thought that we were recording a Rickenbacker 12-string, and he looked at me, he's like, have you ever recorded a Rickenbacker 12-string? It's like, he said to me, it's so difficult to get it to sound good.
Yeah.
And then told me that trick.
Yeah, he's one of my early kind of mentors and someone who I looked up to quite a bit.
We were just talking about him earlier because the first album I did as a musician in America, he was the producer.
No way.
Yeah, with Greg.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, his son Paul is a very close friend of mine.
I've already said this to Tim off camera, but we all went out for dinner.
Yeah.
When we were making that record in October of '95.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know if Paul will remember, but I was a bleach blonde-haired indie kid. And we were, I spent some time talking to Paul. I don't know if he'll remember. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure he met a million bands in those days.
Absolutely. But Don, man, he really, a lot of what I know about recording rock and roll came from kind of assisting him and chatting with him and doing some stuff. And yeah, he's definitely inspirational producer.
His drum sounds are some of the best drum sounds
I
ever
strive for every time, 100%. Yeah.
Go back to Main Offender. I know I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But yeah, you put on a pair of headphones, listen to Main Offender, and you're just like, wow.
Talk about something that just like cuts through the speakers, but not in this like abrasive, in this like warm, you want to just turn it up until you can't even turn it up anymore, Yeah. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
I remember, do you know Chad Fisher?
No.
Chad's a great drummer, and he played on that record that Don produced. And I wanted to learn to play drums.
Yeah.
So I was like, what would you suggest, for a guy just with a drum kit to learn? He goes, get Main Offender, put on a pair of headphones, and just play to it, and then you'll learn how to be a drummer.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. That's good advice.
Everything about it. Drum sound, Steve Jordan's performance, everything.
Oh, well, you can't go wrong with Steve. Yeah.
No, Don was, inadvertently a mentor of mine because I'm there as a musician, just like seeping it all in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Remember The Fairchild with the Mick and Keith written on it?
I do. And having assisted him with that Fairchild, I also remember him saying, no, I need you to plug this in, but it's very dangerous and quite possibly is going to electrocute you because it was like wide open. It was like the back was like completely open and like you had to like kind of get in there to plug it in.
Where did you assist him in Agora?
I assisted him once or twice at Capitol, and then a few times at a indie studio, King Size. And yeah,
King Size. Yeah.
We did a few things over there, and I got to work with him on about 2 or 3 different projects. And again, I was at the time I was still working at Capitol, and his son Paul was there, and so we were buddies. So
wow,
yeah, amazing. He was really cool, and
that's amazing. Well, say hi to Paul for me, even though he'll be like, I have no idea who that guy is. It's okay.
Yeah,
I was one of millions of musicians.
Oh yeah,
amazing. Well, so what else you got in here?
Oh, my trusty whirly. This is my little babe.
D, isn't it?
Dreamer. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you too. It's like I had this in the control room kind of when I first moved into the space, and we're talking about Breakfast in America,
Wouldn't it be nice?
which starts off with that whirly sound, and to kind of hear that in that room was really exciting.
I remember how you play it.
Yeah, this is
It's amazing.
a good one.
Yeah, I had a whirly for years, and I sold it when I moved over to America. I couldn't ship it out. But I remember it was like £150 when I bought it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, of course, it's worth a fortune. It
Yeah.
serves me right.
I kind of got in right at I didn't pay too much for this, and then it's gone up since then.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's, all this one, it's my Moog. So, yeah, I brought some toys, and it's...
gorgeous.
Yeah. It's been cool.
Oh, you got up. Oh, so it's like, not a Hofner, it's a Rogue.
Oh, yeah.
I love
a
that.
little cheapo knockoff, but, it does the one trick for the one-trick pony of the Hofner sound.
Well, I have the Hofner, I bought from Sweetwater or Reverb or something like that. It was $350.
Okay, yeah.
They do a cheap version. I mean, I agree. It's like you want that sound, and off you go.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I don't know if the Hofner was ever. I could be completely wrong. I'm likely to be, but I don't think the Hofner was ever considered to be an expensive instrument.
No, but I don't think. I think that was the point. It was accessible.
I feel like some of the stuff that we love now, like the silver tones and the Dan Electros. Those were always inexpensive instruments.
And because they were accessible, they were then used on things that became classic and touchstones, and and that's that's the Telly, the high string.
Oh, that's the high string.
Yeah,
the Don Smith.
Yes,
there it is.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, I was assisting him. He told me that. I'm like, oh, I got this Telly, so I set that up like 15 years ago, like that, and that's how it's been ever since.
I have a Epiphone acoustic that was in a skip and only had 4 working machine heads on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my high string. Or my 12-string acoustic is basically that doubled.
Yeah,
and it's again.
Well, there's something.
Don Smith, October '95, telling me that. I remember it very well.
But there's something about doing it that way that creates, because it's a double now.
Yeah.
It's created an extra level of kind of chorusiness. You know what I mean? Because the strums aren't exactly the same. So you have this. It's a 12-string, but it's kind of a little even more kind of wide and and then you can kind of pan them differently and do stuff, and you get this. You get an interesting. I think a kind of more musical tone than even just a straight 12-string, because you can kind of like manipulate them, more individually.
God bless him. He was such a great talent. It was Joe. Thank you ever so much.
Oh, really? A pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been absolutely wonderful. Even if it's just for that. Do you get that little scene of me playing that guitar? That's going to get chopped in. Yeah.
Oh, good. That
was beautiful. And so please ask the artist if he ever wants to sell that guitar.
Oh yeah, I'll tell Nick that.
I'm sure he'll be like, no, that's the reason why I use it.
Yeah, I don't think it's for sale, but could be.
Yeah, gorgeous. So thank you ever so much. Thanks for sharing. It's actually not only showing some great techniques, but also, I feel like for me, we all want to belong. We all want to be part of the community and stuff. And hearing everybody's journey and understanding that it wasn't just because I don't know about you, but I get lots of people come back and go, oh, it's all about luck and who you know and what. It's like, no, it isn't. It's about...
Well, there's luck involved, but there's hard work and there's talent also involved. And it kind of takes all of those things to
What's it? Luck is hard work and opportunity when they meet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, But yeah, I'm happy to be a part of this and be a part of this community and to talk to people that are also passionate about it. So
we're blessed. We're blessed to be able to do this.
It's a real pleasure.
Well, thank you ever so much.
Yeah.
Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Maybe I can see if there's anything specific you want to ask Joe. Please ask below and we'll get to it. Thanks as ever. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. And thanks again for showing us around.
Oh, of course.